A racist firefighter humiliates a black girl with dirty water, not knowing her father was the chief of police. Hey guys, before starting this impactful story, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any stories. Comment from which city you're watching. Your opinion on this story is very important for us. The scorching summer sun beat down on the small central square where children of different ages played near the fountain. Among them was Maya, a 12-year-old girl with dark skin and curly hair carefully braided by her mother that morning. Her smile lit up the room as she played with other children, never imagining that afternoon would change her life forever. On the corner, the fire department was holding a public demonstration of its equipment. Lieutenant Richard Matthews, a 45-year-old man known for his difficult temper and veiled prejudices, led the performance. His 20 years with the corporation had not softened his harsh personality, and his subordinates often exchanged tense glances when he was around. What no one knew at that time was that, just a few kilometers away, the newly installed police chief, Marcus Johnson, was finishing an important meeting about structural changes in the security forces. After years of dedication and overcoming countless obstacles, he had achieved one of the most important positions in the local police force. Marcus was Maya's father, but kept a low profile to protect his family. The afternoon remained calm until a group of children asked the firefighters to cool them down with water, a common practice on hot days. Lieutenant Matthews watched the scene with a disturbing look, his eyes fixed on Maya, who was happily playing with Sarah and Miguel, her best friends since kindergarten. The sound of the fire department siren echoed through the square, masking the children's laughter. The high-pressure hose was in the hands of Lieutenant Matthews, who was adjusting the pressure while an unsettling smile formed on his face. The festive air of the square was beginning to give way to palpable tension as some of the younger firefighters on the team exchanged worried glances. Maya, in her innocence, did not notice the prejudiced looks that the lieutenant gave her. She just smiled, hoping to be refreshed like the other children, without imagining that in the next few minutes, her afternoon of fun would turn into a moment that would shake the city's power structures and reveal long hidden truths. The sound of water began to gush from the hose, and the fate of everyone present was about to change forever. The central square was the meeting point where the different realities of the city converged. On Saturday mornings like this one, families from all social classes shared the same space. The century-old fountain, recently restored, served as a reference point for children's meetings and games. Maya wasn't just the police chief's daughter, was a brilliant student who dreamed of becoming a doctor. Her mother, Diana Johnson, PhD in biochemistry, taught at the local university and always encouraged her daughter to pursue her dreams, regardless of the obstacles that society might impose. Diana had taught Maya to face prejudice with dignity, but also to recognize when she should fight for her rights. Lieutenant Richard Matthews carried a dark reputation within the fire department. His subordinates were well aware of his prejudices, carefully masked during inspections and official events. Son of a family traditionally linked to firefighters, Matthews grew up with privileges and a distorted view of superiority. Rumors about his discriminatory attitude circulated through the corporation's corridors, but no one had the courage to confront him directly. Among the younger firefighters was Jason Torres, a 23-year-old rookie who watched the demonstration with increasing discomfort. He had witnessed several prejudiced comments from Matthews during training, but his status as a recruit prevented him from speaking out. That day, something in his eyes revealed that the situation could get out of control. Sarah, Maya's best friend, was the daughter of Sergeant Peter Collins, a veteran firefighter who served under Matthews' command. Peter had secretly documented several incidents involving his superior, keeping a detailed file that could expose years of inappropriate behavior. His hesitation in reporting came from fear of retaliation and the possible destabilization of the corporation. The community around the square had its own dynamic. Mrs. Martinez, owner of the coffee shop on the corner, always kept a protective eye on the children who played there. She had experienced similar discrimination throughout her 30 years as a local business owner and recognized the signs of tension in the air. The newly built community center across the square symbolized the changes the city was trying to implement. Social inclusion projects and anti-discrimination programs were carried out there, many of them discreetly supported by Chief Johnson, who believed in transformation through education and dialogue. Miguel, another close friend of Maya, was the son of one of the municipal councillors. His presence in the square that day was no coincidence. His father had received anonymous reports about Matthews's behavior and asked his son to remain alert during the firefighters' demonstration. The tension in the air was palpable. The intense summer heat seemed to amplify every look, every gesture. The children continued their games, oblivious to the undercurrents of prejudice and power that flowed around them. Maya, in particular, maintained her radiant smile, unaware that her presence there would be the catalyst for a series of events that would change not only her life, but the power structure of the entire city. The high-pressure hose in Matthew's hands represented more than a simple work tool. It was an instrument of power that he was about to use in ways no one could predict. The sun continued mercilessly, reflecting off the metal of the fire trucks, as the decisive moment approached inexorably. The moment that would change everything began when Matthews aimed the hose at the group of children. Unlike the gentle spray used to cool the other little ones, he deliberately increased the pressure. The first target was Maya, and the water that came out was not the crystal-clear liquid used previously. It was dirty, muddy water from the reserve tank used in training. "Oops, looks like someone needed an extra shower today," Matthews commented with a wicked grin, as his subordinates looked on in horror. Maya's white school uniform was instantly stained brown, her meticulously done braids dripping with dirty water. Sarah tried to intervene, running to protect her friend, but her father, Sergeant Collins, pulled her back, his eyes revealing a mixture of shame and helplessness. Jason Torres, the rookie firefighter, stepped forward, but was quickly silenced by a menacing glare from Matthews. "Lieutenant, this is completely unnecessary," Torres muttered, his hands shaking with suppressed rage. Matthews just laughed, continuing his display of power, now specifically targeting the non-white children in the group. Ms. Martinez ran out of her coffee shop with clean towels as other adults began to approach, some discreetly filming with their cell phones. The festive atmosphere of the square had transformed into a scene of tension and silent indignation. Maya, soaked and humiliated, stood her ground. Years of her mother's teachings about dignity echoed in her mind. She didn't cry, she didn't run away. His eyes met Matthews with an intensity that made him hesitate for a moment. "You're using the wrong equipment, Lieutenant," Maya said with surprising calm for a 12-year-old girl. "That's training water, isn't it?" His privileged education and knowledge absorbed from conversations with his father about emergency procedures were evident. Matthews was visibly disturbed by the girl's articulate response. His humiliation plan was being challenged by a child who demonstrated more professionalism than himself. "Listen here, little girl," Matthews began, but was interrupted by the sound of approaching sirens. A regular police car was making its rounds, and the momentary panic on the lieutenant's face revealed that despite his arrogance, he feared the consequences of his actions. Sergeant Collins discreetly began photographing the scene, adding more evidence to his secret file. Miguel, the son of the municipal councillor, recorded everything with his cell phone, his hands shaking with rage, but holding the camera steady. The crowd around the square grew. Parents called their children close, but no one left. Everyone felt they were witnessing something important. The air was thick with a mixture of indignation and expectation. "It's not going to stay like this," Sarah whispered to Maya as she helped her dry off. "My father has proof of other things he did." Matthews, realizing that the situation was getting out of his control, tried to reverse the situation. "It was just a technical accident. These things happen." But his attempt at an explanation sounded hollow in the face of the accusing looks around him. Jason Torres discreetly removed the hose from the dirty water tank and connected it to the clean water tank, a silent act of resistance that didn't go unnoticed by the other firefighters. What no one knew yet was that among the spectators was a reporter from the local newspaper, attracted by the commotion. His frantic notes captured every detail of the scene, every word exchanged, every reaction. Maya remained at the center of it all, her clothes ruined, but her dignity intact. She didn't know that her father, at that exact moment, was receiving the first messages about the incident, along with videos that were already beginning to circulate on social media. Tensions continued to rise, and what began as a routine demonstration by firefighters was about to turn into a catalyst for changes far greater than anyone could imagine. As the situation in the square unfolded, several parallel stories began to intertwine. At the central station, Chief Johnson's cell phone vibrated incessantly with notifications. An officer, Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez, hurriedly entered his office. "Boss, you need to see this," she said, showing the videos that were going viral on social media. Marcus Johnson's face remained impassive, years of police training masking the storm within as he recognized his daughter in the images. Simultaneously, at the local university, Diana Johnson received urgent messages from her students who were in the square. As a respected teacher and quiet civil rights activist, she had witnessed countless instances of discrimination, but seeing her own daughter targeted made her blood boil. At the fire station, an even more complex subplot was developing. Captain James Henderson, Matthew's immediate superior, received an anonymous call. It was Sergeant Collins, using a burner phone, finally deciding to expose Matthew's years of abusive behavior. "I have a complete file," Collins said, his voice disguised. "Previous cases, testimonies, photos, everything documented." Henderson, known for his integrity, began quietly taking notes. Sarah, still in the square, sent messages to a secret group of firefighters' families who had suffered for years because of Matthew's actions. The group, until then fearful of reprisals, began to gain courage, seeing the repercussions of the incident. Miguel, in turn, was on a discreet video call with his father, Municipal Councillor Roberto Sanchez. "Dad, I managed to record everything. It wasn't an accident, he did it on purpose." The councillor, who had been trying for months to approve measures against discrimination in the public service, saw this as the opportunity he needed. Jason Torres, the young firefighter, faced his own dilemma. His probationary period would end in 2 weeks, and any allegations could cost his career. Regardless, he began composing a detailed report of the incident on his phone. Mrs. Martinez from the coffee shop wasn't just a local businesswoman. She was also president of the Neighborhood Businessmen's Association. While helping Maya, he made discreet calls, mobilizing other traders for a possible demonstration. At the community center, coordinator Amanda Chen watched the scene through the window. His project for integration between police, firefighters, and the community, which would be presented next week, would need to be drastically revised in light of events. A local TV station van parked discreetly on the corner. Reporter Rebecca Santos, known for her investigative reports on discrimination, began collecting statements from witnesses. Meanwhile, in the mayor's office, an emergency meeting was called. The incident threatened to expose years of administrative negligence regarding reports of discrimination in public services. Maya, still at the center of it all, didn't know that her dignity in the face of humiliation was inspiring dozens of people to finally speak out. Her cell phone rang. It was a message from her mother. "I'm on my way, sweetie. Stay strong." All these narrative lines converged on a common point, creating a complex web of relationships and consequences that no one, not even Matthews in his act of discrimination, could have predicted. The incident was about to set off a chain reaction that would affect the city's entire power structure. The turning point arrived unexpectedly, not through a single grandiose action, but through a series of events that unfolded almost simultaneously. As Matthews attempted damage control, ordering his subordinates to collect equipment and end the demonstration, an imposing figure emerged from the crowd. It was Marcus Johnson, the chief of police, still in his official uniform. His face was composed, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made Matthews flinch instinctively. "Lieutenant Matthews!" Johnson's voice boomed across the square, now silent. "I believe we have a serious matter to discuss." The crowd parted, creating a corridor between the police chief and the astonished firefighter. At that exact moment, Diana Johnson arrived at the square, running to hug Maya. The scene of the mother comforting her daughter, both facing the situation with dignity, was captured by cell phone cameras and by the local TV crew, who broadcast live. Matthews, realizing the gravity of the situation, tried one last play. "Boss Johnson, it was just a misunderstanding, a technical accident." But his words were interrupted by an unexpected voice. Jason Torres, the young firefighter, stepped forward. "It wasn't an accident, sir," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Lieutenant Matthews deliberately used dirty water and increased the pressure." The silence that followed was deafening. At that moment, Captain Henderson arrived on the scene, accompanied by Sergeant Collins. "Chief Johnson," Henderson spoke, "we have evidence that this is not an isolated incident." Collins, summoning all his courage, added, "I have documented years of similar behavior by Lieutenant Matthews." The crowd began to murmur, and several people stepped forward, ready to share their own experiences. Mrs. Martinez was the first. "He's been doing this for years, intimidating our children, our young people. It's time someone did something." Rebecca Santos, the reporter, approached with her microphone. "Chief Johnson, could you comment on the allegations of systematic discrimination in the fire department?" It was at this moment that Maya, still wet and dirty, but with surprising inner strength, took the microphone. "This isn't about me," she said, her voice clear and firm. "It's about all of us, about how we treat each other, about respect and dignity." His words, broadcast live, electrified the crowd. On social media, Maya's video began to go viral instantly, with thousands of shares within minutes. Councillor Sanchez, who had arrived discreetly, took the moment to announce, "I will call a special session of the City Council later today. We can no longer ignore these problems." Matthews, watching his world fall apart, tried one last desperate gamble. "You can't prove anything. It's the word of some criminals against that of a decorated officer." But his arrogance was his ultimate undoing. From the crowd, someone shouted, "It's all recorded!" It was Miguel brandishing his cell phone. "I have everything here from the beginning." Chief Johnson, maintaining his composure, gestured to two officers accompanying him. "Lieutenant Matthews, you are temporarily relieved of duty pending investigation." He turned to the crowd. "I promise you all, this incident will be thoroughly investigated, and we will take all necessary measures to ensure that our security force serves and protects everyone without exception." Diana, hugging Maya, spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is an opportunity for real change, not just punishment, but education and reform." The square, once a place of carefree recreation, had become the epicenter of a social revolution. Cameras were filming, people were crying and hugging each other, and a feeling of unity was in the air. Matthews was escorted from the square, his career and reputation in ruins. But the focus wasn't on him. It was in the community that came together, in the voices that were finally heard, and in the promise of a better future. As the dust began to settle, it became clear that this was not the end, but just the beginning of a journey of transformation for the entire city. In the hours and days following the incident in the square, the city was gripped by a wave of changes and chain reactions. The next morning, local newspapers carried headlines such as "Act of Discrimination Exposes Years of Prejudice" and "Young Maya, the Voice That Shook the City." Social media was buzzing with hashtags like Justiça para Maya and Mudança Já, which quickly became a national trend. The fire department went into crisis. Captain Henderson, with the support of Sergeant Collins's secret file, began a comprehensive internal investigation. Several firefighters, encouraged by Jason Torres's example, began reporting past incidents of discrimination and abuse of power. At the police station, Chief Johnson faced his own dilemma. As a father, he wanted to protect Maya. As police chief, he knew he needed to maintain impartiality in the investigation. He called a press conference where he declared, "This incident has shown us that we still have a lot of work to do. We are committed to eradicating any form of discrimination in our security forces." Diana Johnson turned her classroom into a forum for discussion about institutional discrimination. Her students, inspired by Maya's example, started an awareness movement on the university campus. The city council, led by Councillor Sanchez, called an extraordinary session. A resolution was unanimously approved to create an independent commission to oversee security forces, with the power to investigate allegations of misconduct. Ms. Martinez organized a vigil in the square, which turned into a community solidarity event. Hundreds of people attended, lighting candles and sharing personal stories of discrimination and overcoming. Maya, still processing the events, has unwittingly become a symbol of resistance and dignity. She was invited to speak at schools and community groups, always accompanied by her parents, who went out of their way to protect her from the sudden exposure. Young firefighter Jason Torres was recognized for his courage. His action inspired other professionals to speak out against injustices in their workplaces. Reporter Rebecca Santos produced a series of investigative reports revealing a culture of silence and complicity that allowed Matthews's behavior to persist for so long. The mayor, under pressure from public opinion, announced a comprehensive reform plan, including mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all public employees. Matthews, removed from his duties, faced not only an internal investigation, but also the possibility of criminal charges. Her case became a national talking point about abuse of power and institutionalized discrimination. Sarah and Miguel, Maya's friends, started a club at school focused on social justice and youth activism. They organized debates and community actions, inspiring other young people to get involved in social issues. The community center, led by Amanda Chen, has become a focal point for dialogue between the community and law enforcement. Workshops and meetings were organized to build bridges and promote mutual understanding. As the city underwent this transformation, Maya and her family faced their own challenges. The exhibition brought not only support, but also criticism and veiled threats from groups that resisted change. In the fire department, new leadership has emerged, committed to reform and inclusion. Mentoring programs have been established to support firefighters from underrepresented groups. As the weeks passed, it became clear that the incident in the square had been just the catalyst for a much larger change. The city was in a process of self-reflection and transformation, facing decades of entrenched prejudices and flawed systems. The journey was far from over, but a significant step had been taken towards a more just and inclusive community. In the months following the incident, the city and its inhabitants underwent an intense period of reflection, learning, and transformation. Maya, at the center of this storm of change, faced her own personal growth challenges. Initially overwhelmed by the sudden attention, Maya found strength in therapy sessions and the unconditional support of her family. Diana and Marcus Johnson created a protective shield around their daughter, filtering invitations and managing her public exposure. Over time, Maya learned to use her voice more assertively, turning her experience into a platform for positive change. In an emotional talk to high school students, Maya shared, "Prejudice does not define me. What defines me are my actions and how I choose to respond to injustice." His maturity and eloquence surprised even his parents. Chief Johnson faced the challenge of balancing his professional role with his family responsibilities. In a crucial meeting with the mayor and city council, he proposed a sweeping overhaul of security force training and hiring protocols. "We cannot change the past," he declared, "but we can shape a future where every citizen feels safe and respected." Diana Johnson expanded her academic work to include studies on the impact of institutional racism on education. She organized a conference at the university that drew experts from across the country, putting her city on the map as a center for progressive discussions about equality and justice. In the fire department, the changes were profound and sometimes painful. Captain Henderson, now acting chief, has implemented a rigorous diversity and inclusion training program. Jason Torres, promoted to sergeant, became a vocal advocate for institutional reform, inspiring a new generation of firefighters committed to equitable service to the community. Sarah and Miguel, Maya's friends, turned their school club into a citywide youth movement. They organized peaceful marches, awareness workshops, and even a hackathon focused on developing apps to report and combat discrimination. Ms. Martinez of the coffee shop has seen her business flourish as a symbol of resistance and community unity. She expanded the space, creating an equality corner where people from all backgrounds came together to dialogue and build bridges. Councillor Sanchez, buoyed by public support, was able to pass a series of progressive laws, including the creation of a racial equity department at City Hall and the implementation of mandatory body cameras for all public safety employees. Matthews, the former lieutenant, faced consequences for his actions. After a much-publicized trial, he was convicted not only of misconduct, but also of a series of previously unreported hate crimes. His sentence served as a powerful reminder that impunity would no longer be tolerated. Reporter Rebecca Santos won a national award for her series of reports, which was now being adapted into a documentary. Her work has not only exposed systemic racism, but also highlighted stories of resilience and positive change in the community. The community center, under the leadership of Amanda Chen, has become a national model of cooperation between citizens and law enforcement. Mentoring programs, facilitated dialogues, and collaborative projects helped build trust and mutual understanding. Maya, now 13, has found a new passion: writing. She began working on a book aimed at young readers, sharing her experience and offering guidance on how to face prejudice with dignity and strength. The city, once divided by the incident, was now seen as an example of transformation and progress. Delegations from other cities began visiting to learn from their reform and reconciliation initiatives. In a touching moment during an awards ceremony where Maya was honored for her activism, she surprised everyone by inviting Jason Torres on stage. "Real change," she said, "happens when brave people decide to do the right thing even when it's hard." As the year came to an end, the city prepared to celebrate not only the end of the year festivities, but also the anniversary of a profound transformation. Maya, looking out her bedroom window at the now renewed and vibrant plaza, reflected on how a moment of pain turned into a catalyst for the growth of an entire community. The journey was far from over, but Maya and her city had learned a powerful lesson. True change begins with an act of courage and is sustained through a collective commitment to justice and equality. A year after the incident, the city was preparing for a significant event: the inauguration of the new Center for Equality and Justice, an ambitious project born directly from the changes catalyzed by Maya's experience. In the days leading up to the ceremony, an atmosphere of expectation hovered over the city. Final preparations were underway, and several subplots were beginning to converge on this crucial moment. Maya, now 14, was about to give her first big public speech as the event's keynote speaker. Behind the scenes, she rehearsed tirelessly, determined to use this platform to inspire even more change. Diana and Marcus Johnson watched with a mixture of pride and apprehension, aware of the weight their daughter was carrying. At the renovated fire department, now Chief Henderson and Sergeant Jason Torres were leading the final preparations for a special demonstration. They planned to showcase the corporation's new, inclusive policies and practices, symbolizing the transformation the institution had undergone. Sarah and Miguel, with their youth movement now nationally recognized, mobilized young people from across the region to participate in the event. They hosted pre-event workshops on responsible activism and civic participation. Councillor Sanchez was constantly on the move, ensuring that all legal and administrative aspects of the new centre were in order. He knew that the eyes of the nation would be on his city, and the pressure for everything to go perfectly was immense. Reporter Rebecca Santos was preparing a special live broadcast, planning interviews with key figures and an emotional look back at the city's journey over the last year. Meanwhile, in an unexpected twist, news emerged that Matthews, the convicted former lieutenant, had requested permission to make a public statement during the event. His lawyer claimed he wanted to apologize and show how he had changed during his time in prison. This news caused division and heated debate in the community. Ms. Martinez and other community leaders organized a series of side events around the city, ensuring that the spirit of unity and progress extended far beyond the official ceremony. Amanda Chen from the community center coordinated a team of volunteers for the event, including former skeptics who are now staunch supporters of the city's new direction. On the eve of the inauguration, unexpected tension arose. A small but vocal group of opponents of the changes began to demonstrate, claiming that the reforms had gone too far. They planned a protest during the ceremony. Police Chief Johnson was in a delicate position, having to guarantee the safety of the event while respecting the right of peaceful protest. He called for an emergency meeting with his team to develop a plan that kept peace without escalation of conflict. Maya, upon learning of the planned protest, surprised everyone by suggesting that protesters were invited to participate in an open dialogue after the ceremony. If we want a real change, she argued, we need to be willing to hear all the voices, even those we disagree. The night before the big day, the city seemed to vibrate with energy. Lights were installed, ranges erected, and security teams made the last preparations. In homes, schools, and offices, conversations revolved around the event and the future of the community. Maya spent the night ending her speech, aware that her words could shape the tone not only of the event, but the next chapter in the history of her city. She knew that the real test of everything they had built last year was about to start. As the sun was born on the opening day, there was a palpable feeling that something monumental was about to happen. The stage was mounted for a moment that could define not only the future of the city, but serve as an example for the nation. The day of the inauguration of the Center for Equality and Justice dawned with a clear sky and a palpable energy in the air. The central square, once the scene of discrimination, was now transformed into a symbol of hope and change. At 9 a.m., the crowd began to gather. National news cameras captured the diversity of gifts. Families, activists, uniformed officers, and ordinary citizens, all united by a common purpose. Police Chief Johnson, in full uniform, personally supervised security. His attentive eyes noticed the small group of protesters who formed peacefully in a designated corner, holding posters with opposition messages. At 10 a.m., the ceremony began. The mayor made a brief opening speech, followed by Councillor Sanchez, who detailed the implemented legislative changes. The audience applauded, but the real anticipation was by Maya's speech. When Maya took the stage, a respectful silence fell on the crowd. At 14, she emanated a confidence that belied her age. Your speech started. A year ago, in this same square, I faced the worst and the best of our community. Today, I am not here to remember the pain, but to celebrate our collective journey towards justice and equality. While Maya spoke, something unexpected happened. One of the protesters, visibly thrilled by his words, lowered his poster, and began to approach the stage. Security guards were alert, but Chief Johnson, recognizing the man as a former department mate who had resisted the changes, signaled them to allow his approach. Maya, without losing the composure, continued. Real change requires courage. Courage to face our own flaws. Courage to hear different perspectives. Courage to believe that we can be better. At this moment, the protester arrived in front of the stage. Tears in his eyes, he raised his hand on a gesture of peace. Maya, in a spontaneous act of compassion that surprised everyone, reached out to him. This simple but deeply symbolic gesture electrified the crowd. Cameras clicked frantically, capturing the moment when divisions began visibly dissolving. Maya continued, her voice now loaded with emotion. This center is not just a building, it is a commitment, and commitment that each person in our community will be seen, heard, and valued. As she spoke, Sergeant Jason Torres and her firefighter team began her special demonstration. In a carefully planned choreography, they used their hoses to create a rainbow of water on the crowd, symbolizing the diversity and unity of the community. The tension in the air completely dissipated as children of all colors and origins ran to play under the colorful spray, their laughter echoing around the square. Maya concluded her speech with a call to action. Our work does not end today. Each day is an opportunity to build the community we deserve. A community where no one is judged by the color of your skin, but by the content of your character. When she ended, the ovation was deafening. People hugged, some cried openly. The former manifestant, still standing near the stage, was the first to start a new wave of applause. The climax reached its apex when Chief Johnson took the stage, not as an authority figure, but as a proud father. He embraced Maya, a gesture that symbolized the union between generations, between law and community. At this point, Matthew's lawyer appeared, handing over to Chief Johnson. It was a sincere apology for Matthews, recognizing the damage he had caused and expressing his desire to redeem himself. Chief Johnson, in an act of compassionate leadership, read the letter aloud, demonstrating that the path to true justice also included the possibility of redemption. The ceremony culminated in the cut of the new center tape, an act performed jointly by Maya, the mayor, and surprisingly, the former manifestant, symbolizing the new era of collaboration and mutual understanding. As the crowd dispersed, there was a palpable feeling that something truly transformative had occurred. The city had not only inaugurated a new building, he had reaffirmed his commitment to a fairer and more egalitarian future. Maya, surrounded by her family and friends, looked at the square now full of smiles and hugs. She knew this was not the end, but only the beginning of a continuous journey towards true equality. In the weeks and months following the inauguration of the Equality and Justice Center, the effects of the event continued to reverberate the city and beyond. Maya's speech has become viral, being shared millions of times on social networks and quoted in national debates on police reform and social justice. Invitations to lectures in other cities began to arrive, and Maya, with careful support from her parents, accepted some, always balancing her new activist role with her teenage life. The center quickly established itself as a hub of community activities. Mentoring programs, awareness workshops, and dialogue sessions between different community groups have become regular. The former manifestant who had downloaded his poster during Maya's speech became a frequent attendant, eventually volunteering to lead discussions about how to overcome rooted prejudices. In the fire department, the changes implemented by Chief Henderson and Sergeant Torres began to show tangible results. Diversity between new recruits has increased significantly, and community satisfaction reports with the service provided reached record levels. Police Chief Johnson, inspired by his daughter's courage, implemented an innovative community policing program that became a model for other cities. He also began a dialogue with Matthews, the former incarcerated lieutenant, exploring ways to use his experience to educate others about the dangers of institutionalized prejudice. Sarah and Miguel expanded their youth movement to a national organization, connecting young activists from all over the country and promoting positive changes in their communities. Reporter Rebecca Santos published a book detailing the city's journey, which became a must-read in many journalism and social studies courses. Mrs. Martinez turned her coffee shop into a vibrant community space where regular meetings were held to discuss local issues and plan new initiatives. A year after the inauguration, the city hosted a national conference on equality and justice, attracting leaders and activists from all over the country. Maya, now 15, was invited to make the closing speech. In her speech, she reflected, "Our journey taught us that real change does not happen overnight. It is a continuous process that requires commitment, compassion, and above all the courage to face our own flaws and prejudices. A little act of kindness, every difficult conversation, every extended hand in understanding takes us a step closer to the world we want to create." While the conference was coming to an end, it was clear that the history of the city and Maya had become a headlight of hope and a transformation model for communities across the country. The incident that began with an act of discrimination had become a catalyst for a lasting and positive change, proving that even the darkest moments can lead to a brightest future. Maya, now 19, is preparing to enter the law school, determined to continue her work in social justice. The city, once the scene of conflict, has become a national model of reform and reconciliation. The Center for Equality and Justice has expanded, with branches in other cities. Matthews, fulfilling his sentence, participates in rehabilitation and education programs. Changes implemented by Chief Johnson and other community leaders continue to bear fruit. While new challenges arise, the community faces them together, always remembering that the true change begins with an act of courage and sustains itself through continuous collective effort. Spectators, if you have watched here, your journey with us through this powerful story, not it can end on the screen. Real change begins with each of us. Reflect on how you can promote equality and justice in your own community. Share your ideas and experiences in the comments below. Your voice matters. Be sure to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell for more inspiring content like this. And remember, true change happens when we act. Comment, "I watched to the end," to show your commitment to a fairer world. Now don't miss the final screen video. Your next inspirational source is just one click.